Welcome, folks, to the MIAA's show, Winning Ways. I'm here with my co-host, Pete Royce. I'm Jay Horrigan. Pete, how are you today?
Good, Jay. Nice to be with you on a beautiful day.
Gorgeous day, and we're very fortunate. We're going to do a topic today that's near and dear to my heart. Anybody who's listened to any of mine and Pete's coverage of Franklin sports, it's officiating. And I do promise not to try to get into rules or anything, but we're fortunate enough to have with us Mr. Richard Pearson of the MIAA. Mr. Pearson is the Associate Executive Director and has been with the MIAA how long?
For about 10 years now.
Yeah, that's it. And he has been instrumental in working with officials in all sports, all the boards. It has been a great relationship, I think, the way you've worked with people.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've really tried to reach out to the boards in the state of Massachusetts, as in this state. The design of our state is that our boards in all of our sports help to train, manage, and develop officials across the state. So that partnership is really critical. And the partnership of all those board leaders that really care about officiating is a really big part of what we do.
And that's a big part of people that are involved in boards or have been involved in officiating for so long. And we're fortunate enough to have two, I guess the best way to put it is seasoned officials. First of all, we have David Costa, who is from the Fall River area, a hockey and lacrosse official. Dave, how are you today?
Good, thank you very much.
Great. We appreciate you joining us, and we also have on Zoom with us Ron Hobby, who is from Winchester, football and basketball official and former Division I AA college football official. So Ron has seen it all, as has Dave, being a hockey official. Ron, how are you today?
Doing very well, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you to both of you for joining us. So, first of all, Pete, we had talked ahead of time.
Yeah. I really think the key is on this issue, before we jump into solutions, which we want to get to, is really define what the problem is we're talking about. Richard, what is your perspective on what is the problem, how deep is it, and so forth?
So I think I'd start to say it's relatively deep. The problem is nationwide, not just Massachusetts. We do know that across the country, over the past 5 to maybe 7 years, we're down about 50,000 officials in total, which is an extraordinary number. It's an extraordinary number. I wouldn't even say the numbers were massive before that, but to be down 50,000 of it when we always needed officials anyways is a big lift for us. In the state of Massachusetts, probably down about 1,100 in the overall, and that's all of our sports. Some sports are bigger than others. The impact on that, to be candid and honest about it, the impact on that is probably different. In some sports, if you lose 100 or so, that's a lot. In other sports, if you lose 50 or so, it may not be the same feel at first. But right. I would say in general, 1,100 is not where we want to be. And the final thing I'll mention, in Massachusetts, we actually are a pretty large and active state with 377 schools, roughly 230,000 athletes. There's a lot of sports in Massachusetts. There are other states that might be larger geographically in Massachusetts, but have far less sporting activities. So for Massachusetts to be down 1,000 can be impactful because we kind of need them all and we need them everywhere.
And Richard, do you think the problem is getting worse or getting better?
I still say we're on a decline, so getting worse. I still think we are getting worse. There have been a few moments, and I think the officials that are on the call might be able to answer better from their own experience and seeing new colleagues. I think COVID did not help anyone. It kind of sent us into a place. I think some people that might have been nearing the end of their officiating career, COVID just maybe sped it up a little bit. So I think COVID, did impact us a little bit. But I would even love their opinions on if they're seeing a few new people coming out of COVID. I think there are a few. There are a few rebounds. I just couldn't tell you which exact sports. But I'd be curious on what they think.
Dave, how do you see that decline in hockey? You're also an assigner, so you see it from kind of both sides. In terms of members on your board, I know on our board for basketball, we lost a bunch of guys for COVID that just decided not to come back. How about with your board and in hockey in general around the state?
Sure. The South Shore Iowa chapter specifically, we used to be close to probably 200 members approximately. I say we're down to about 120 or so, if I had to guess. You know, as an assigner, we also use other boards, you know, Central Mass, Eastern Mass, the Cape and Islands, because we do have officials that are willing to travel. You know, certainly as Richard mentioned, coming out of COVID, it was very difficult. We had some folks that, you know, maybe were 2-3 years from retirement, and they just said, you know, this is going to be the time right now. I'll make it an easy exit. You know, kind of coming out of post-COVID, we've, you know, made some small strides, but we've got certainly some room to grow as far as getting new officials in, whether it's younger officials or, you know, some older officials that maybe pick it up later in their life.
Okay, and Ron, what have you seen with the boards you're associated with?
Well, like David said earlier, COVID kind of hurt a lot of it. You have the elder statesmen who are older than me wouldn't come back because of fairness, or just because they're just getting too old and the kids are just getting that much quicker, you know?
Yeah.
It used to be word of mouth back in the day. You grab a friend who might be interested in, like you talked about earlier, making a little extra money, you know, get them involved. They love sports. They love the sports they used to play, and they would come on. But now it's, I don't know about the new generation per se. I don't know if they have the grit that we've been taught, or
Right.
it's just that, you know, it's all about themselves. I can't figure it out either, but I keep trying to encourage former players that I used to coach or officiate to think about, you know, hey, it might be something you want to do, just as an extracurricular activity for you, and to keep in shape too.
David, as you look at your experience over many years being an official, not only hockey but lacrosse, what are some of the challenges that you face that maybe go into defining this problem? Sure, you've lost officials because of COVID, and they had an easy way to kind of gradually and gracefully back out. But what are the other factors, that plus and minus, that you face as an official that may be weighing in on wanting to stay as an official or wanting to get out?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, hockey is very unique. If you can't skate, it's very difficult to referee. So that's, yeah,
I'm out.
first part. You know, I've been doing ice hockey for about 26 years now, and I picked up lacrosse about 5 years ago, and that's a very easy transition. You know, running up and down the field, I can learn the rules. It's much more difficult to get someone from football or basketball or soccer to join the hockey ranks. For the most part, hockey, we're looking at, you know, we try to recruit folks that are either players, you know, high school age players, or maybe former coaches or even parents. So it's certainly a challenge, and you know, like Ron said, it's a great opportunity to stay in the game, give back to the game, get a little exercise, make a little bit of money. You know, it's difficult with the teenagers. They're very busy schedules between multiple sports, schooling, other curricular activities, and they give you a very small window of when they're available, or they contact you very late in the season. So as far as that, it's certainly a challenge.
What kinds of problems do you experience on the ice or on the lacrosse field?
I would say, you know, I think both of them are very, between lacrosse and hockey, speaking to those from experience, it's a different culture. Hockey's got a very different culture than lacrosse. When I took up lacrosse, you know, I worked with some great people to start, and they would tell me, you need to throw a flag there, you know, for maybe the player's conduct. And I was kind of shocked, because in hockey we probably wouldn't bat an eye, and I think that's something in ice hockey that the officials for years kind of, I don't want to say accepted it, but it's that mantra of you promote what you permit, and it's gone on a little too far, and I think we're trying to rein it in, and it's very difficult to, you know, obviously change that overnight. So it's going to take a long time, That's a challenge as far as changing the culture of it. I believe, we try to get some young kids in, and, if they have a coach perhaps that's, a yeller perhaps at the officials, that player says, well, why would I want to go ref? I see my coach, the way he treats officials. I'm not going to do that. And like Ron said earlier, I think the generation of kids coming up these days, they're wired differently. Their thought process is different. They might not have that grit. They might not have that drive to say, hey, I want to give back. I want to get on the ice more. Learn the game more, make some extra money as, a young student athlete. It's a great opportunity. I started when I was 14, and I made certainly more money than friends that were pushing carriages at Stop and Shop or wherever. But it's a challenge for sure.
Ron, as you officiate a basketball game or a football game, what are you encountering, positive and negative? Is it as much fun as when you first started? Let me ask it that way.
I have to laugh at that one. Playing the game, your mind's totally different, okay? Coaching the game, you're trying to bring kids together to perform to their best of ability. Now, becoming an official, which is considered the opposite side, that you're always against, the teams or the coaches or whatever it may seem it is, it's not true. With officiating, I think I've learned to appreciate the game a little bit better now than just playing it, okay? Yeah, I didn't know the rules. I didn't understand the rules. But once I got involved, I started to maybe understand the game a little bit more and how to make it healthier, I would say, more or less. Football, we have 5 officials on the field. Hopefully you have 4 other guys or females. Like on my crew, I have a female with me. We work together. We try to enjoy. We try to communicate with the coaches that, hey, we're here to protect the kids, first of all. We're not here to harm your team or take advantage of your team in any capacity. We just want to see the kids perform to their best of ability. Basketball, sometimes you have 2 officials, you might have 3. Now, the speed on these kids these days, and us getting older, okay, I know I can't move like I could when I was 35 or 40 years old. And you need to be in position to see some of these things. And the coaches that react, as Dave said earlier, yelling coaches, kind of shows kids that, it's acceptable to say things to someone, even though they're basically observing the game, as I call us. We're observers, all right? So I think it's up to us at sometimes, but it's up to administrators, people in the schools to really clamp down on some of these coaches, say, hey, you know what? I know you're building and molding these females and boys, but what you're doing and projecting, they're going to take on and remember.
Right.
And your influence, be it that they do care for you, can manifest later on in life, and they can become that person that they shouldn't become. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as role models, we all need to understand that we have effects on everybody.
Dave, what do you think has contributed to the shortage of officials that we've identified as part of the problem?
I think it's kind of what we touched on earlier. I think the seasoned referees are getting a little bit older, more family obligations or, work commitments, just age, fitness levels, that type of thing. I'm involved on the youth side as well. We try to bring in young officials, and in the state of Massachusetts, the youngest you can officiate at is 14. And, we try to get those young kids in, and if we can get them past year 3, they tend to stick around. But getting past year 3 can be difficult at times for multiple reasons. but it's very difficult with those young kids because they don't drive. They can't get a ride to the rink. They play on 2 club teams before the high school season, perhaps. They also have school. They play chess or whatever it might be, and it's they have very busy schedules. I think life is much different now, where kids are more structured as far as their activities. Where maybe when some of us were younger, we went out and played basketball at the park. We played baseball, and it wasn't as structured and as organized as it is now. So getting those young kids to be able to commit and be available is certainly the challenge.
Ron, is any behavior of parents or friends or fans at the game, at the field, a detriment to attracting new officials?
Well, I think it's a nationwide thing, to tell you the truth. I mean, media shows what's going on. I do have troubles, and again, like Dave says, I do work with, I do youth flag football, and I don't know what it is, I don't understand it, but the kids are trying to learn and play, where the parents think it's, I don't know,
The Super Bowl.
football,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just one of those things, and I don't know where they got it from. Are they putting pressure on their kids by doing this? So then in the end, we get kids who we think are going to be wonderful role models, wonderful community leaders, be influenced by their parents of some sort, that's acceptable, which it shouldn't be. Nothing is acceptable. I don't want to yell at you. You don't want to yell at me. Back in the old days, and I don't really want to say it, we used to handle it by going outside and talking to each other instead of just yelling across the table.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I think we have
that
to.
mentality, but I want kids to enjoy the game more or less than anything else.
Well, that's a great message. That statement right there, enjoy the game more than anything else, is really critical. We have to figure out a way to change the perspective. And unfortunately, I'll be really clear with this, with adults. It is a challenge for us. I think the perspective of adults is probably not in the right lane right now. I know what the data is, and these officials here know the data too. About 91% of students don't play high school sports again. We have about 7.6 million athletes in this country in high school sports. 91 don't play again. Don't play again.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not about Division I scholarships.
No.
That's not playing the sport again. And that 91% that I think we talk about is kind of an average. Some sports are different than others. Maybe a sport like basketball might be 95% don't play again because of the small basketball teams. So we really have to alter that perspective, because at the end of the day, what Ron just said is the truth. They're doing this for the enjoyment of it. What we send them there as parents is to learn about team, is to learn about friendships. It's to learn about collaboration, learn about accepting ups and downs. That's what we're really sending them there for, clear as day. And we have to remember that. And excitement is one thing. Unreasonableness is another. It's absolutely another, and they absolutely look different.
Do you find, and I'd open this to everybody, but I know you go to games almost all the time. Do you find that the behavior, whether it's the coaches, the student athletes, the parents, is, I don't want to say tolerated, but it's not being addressed maybe by site administrators or whomever? In my view, it varies from location to location. You have some that are very active, trying to stop any of this negative behavior, the comments or anything. And you go back to what one of our guests said, that years ago, the philosophy was always, you don't want to be a part of the game. You don't want to address, you want to keep yourself outside of that. And it's become very difficult because it may not be being addressed in some particular areas. How do you see that out there?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I want the guests to chime in too. I think the line has been moved. I absolutely think the line has been moved, and I would like Dave and Ron to talk about that too, because I'm not saying that officials are being that they're I'm not saying they're sliding, and I don't mean that at all. But expectations have changed in our society, and I know how officials operate. They don't really want to eject kids. They don't want to eject parents from stands, because you eject a parent, you embarrass a kid, right? So those issues are real, and so but the line has changed. So I do think that we probably are all impacted by that line. Even when I was a principal, I probably was impacted. Maybe I could have done a little bit more. So I do think we have to put our finger on the pulse of this one.
Right.
I think we got to put our thumb down on it. We actually have to take decisive action in some way. And I'm not trying to make grand statements here, but we just have to be intent. We have to have intent.
Yes.
And we have to have intent with this, right? We have to support good behavior, and we have to stop bad behavior. And I think to the benefit of officials, we have to support them to allow it.
Right.
Because, guys, I'd love you to chime in. You don't really want to throw parents out of a game, and some games are worse than others, right? Hockey, you got the boards between you and the fans a little bit. So how do you go point to the parent? And sometimes you can't even hear it, I'm sure. I would believe that. Ron, in basketball, parents right in your face.
Yeah.
So, but do you really want to point that parent out? And you'd rather not. And by the way, you want to just officiate a game. So, I think the line has moved. But guys, what's your opinion? Do you think the line has moved a little bit, and maybe we're almost a little too tolerant in some capacity, or not? And please, honesty here would be great.
Go ahead, Dave. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is some tolerance that's a little too high, and I think there are some great athletic directors that do an excellent job of controlling fans and players and coaches as well. And like you said, Richard, ice hockey is much different. We have the glass and boards that kind of separate us, and that was one adjustment for myself going into lacrosse. I was like, oh, I'm running right down the sideline.
Right.
It's a much different feeling. In hockey, it's obviously in a building. It's very loud, and it's so you might not catch everything. But there is a point when things get a little too loud, and it is unruly, and you do gotta contact the site director and make a move.
And Ron, when was the last time you teed up somebody with a technical or threw a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct? And what was going on within you when that was happening?
It takes a lot to get a technical from me. I'm not going to say there are a lot of stupid ones. Kids make a mistake. I get it. It's done, but you got to initiate it. Too many people on the court. Kid slams the ball for a delay of game. I understand that. It's a tough thing. I choose, because being a kind of a former player and understanding emotions and this like that, is I will accept a little more, but I'll give you a stare, meaning that you might have just crossed the line with me. Okay? Now, if you do it again, there are consequences for that, more or less. We were talking about basketball. Listen, they're right on top of you. We have to learn to put earplugs in most of the time, because be it someone's kid, you miss this, you miss that. Basketball is quick. It is a contact sport, okay? People don't realize it. It is a contact sport. It's a matter if you've been pushed off your line in regarding to going to the basket or getting a rebound and this and that. That's when we make calls, and we tend to make calls. Football, I'm in the middle of the field. I don't hear anything. The only people that hear anything are my line judge and my side judge, who do a terrific job with the coaches, because they know if they upset them, that means they upset me. And now you woken up someone that you didn't want to wake up, when we're out here trying to protect your kids to make sure they play the best game possible and become injured free, as I would say. We're the safety officers out there, not the bad people. So.
I would, to add to both of these guys' responses, which are tremendous, and I think all of us as officials have a similar thought, have experienced the same thing. I've said to you, Pete, when you and I have done games and we hear some things on the field or whatever, hey, refs are people too. Talk to a ref the same way you would want to be talked to. And that's a lot of times seems to go out the window once that ball is tossed in the air or the puck is dropped on the ice or kickoff. I think Ron had said it, we're almost on the other side, and not only is the opposing team the enemy, so is the crew of officials in that game. Gets treated as the enemy, and it just shouldn't be that way.
It can't be that way. And I use the word perspective, and I always use the word climate. Those things are very real. What both of these officials have said already today is kind of why they're doing it. And Ron just talked about, he just said, I really work with kids, and it takes, I have a pretty good tolerance to work with kids because it could just be a kid making a mistake, right? Yeah, right. And they're kids, right? Okay. If you go talk to kids about why they do sport, they're going to tell you things like friends, team, pride for their school. Okay, I don't think number one is going to be wins. I don't think number I think I can probably find the studies that show that number one is not college scholarship. I already told you what the data is, right? So if you ask kids why they do it, it's for the love of the sport, and if you go ask coaches why they do it, it's for the love of the sport. So I will say from the climate perspective that is impacting our officials, and Ron just said it, basketball is different than football. Football and hockey are two of my sports I manage.
Right.
They're very different than basketball. Totally different. Different than soccer, by the way, too.
Yes.
Soccer can be tricky, too. It can be very noisy on the sidelines. We need to understand that perspective, and if I could ask anything to be taken away is for parents to understand the perspective I just said, that what are the kids doing it for, who's going on, and let's let them enjoy it. Screaming and yelling about a rule that you probably don't even know, which happens all the time, doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't make a kid perform any better.
Right.
And the final thing I'll say about perspective, and Ron, I'd love your chiming in because I know you were an athlete, you've done college. It's 2023 now. If an athlete is that good, anywhere in this country and world, there'll be a video of them.
Absolutely.
They will be found. They will be found. We could pick the smallest school in Massachusetts, and if there is an outstanding athlete, he will be seen, he will be found, and he or she will be known. No question about it.
To echo that, you can look right down the street from where we are now over at King Philip High School. They've sent a couple of players to the NFL. They sent a player to the NBA. Both students at public school went to high school. So I totally agree with you. It is, if you're good enough, people will find you.
Ron, don't you agree with that? This is a different world. Maybe there was a need in 20 or 30 years ago that you had to do something to be seen. It's just not the need. Let the kids play and let athleticism shine. Ron, do you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, is it better to be a big fish in a small pond or a little fish in a big pond? You know what I mean? And that's the mentality that I was taught anyway. They will find you. There are many people observing you. Your coaches have connections. The coaches that they coach again have connections. They will literally tell other people, you need to actually look at these particular individuals because they have potential.
Well, we've now talked about the issue, the problem with officiating. We've been fortunate enough to discuss it. I think we made, Pete, some great strides in that part.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. Thank our guests again for being on. We'll see them the next time in our part 2 of this conversation. It is such a big conversation, it can't be put into a single show. So for this part of our show, that's going to do it for Winning Ways with the MIAA. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.